Howdy honks, and welcome to PRAGMAGICK. I am Keats Ross, and today I am delighted to share with you my two-part liminal stream in one mondo episode with the illustrious dark artist himself, Mr. Chet Zar. You see, the first liminal stream we had was a rollicking great time, especially concerning that of the modern archetype of the starving artist. And well, we decided to do that liminal stream during the infamous Mars-ALGO Uranus conjunction. And no, I'm not blaming the stars for the technical difficulties that cut that one short, but they sure as shit didn't help. Well, Chet, being a brilliant and all-around great dude, decided to join me again for a fully recorded liminal stream, and that is our part 2 here. So, you're listening to both liminal streams in one giganto mondo episode. The music you're hearing below me is that of a new project called DIM TZUM. It's a audiomancy doomgaze duo I created with Frater Perseus of Transplutonic, and on August 4th, due to celestial navigation, we released our first 6-track album. You can check it out at dimtzum.bandcamp.com. And stay tuned towards the end, I'll play a full track for you. And I want to personally thank those who have given offerings to the Medusa's head of the ALGO rhythms by thinking, liking, sharing, or any sort of engagement. Without you, well, what could we do but just spite the dust? In any case, slither hither, weirdos and witches, here's my chat with Chet Zar. Haunt on.
Consciousness is a ghost, a spook, a phantom that somehow spoils the logic of this perfectly balanced clockwork universe, this worldview that we have created for ourselves.
I am very honored today to have the brilliant dark artist himself, Mr. Chet Zar. Chet, it is so good to talk to you mano a mano. I know I've been following your work for forever. I know many of our viewers will be excited to see you too. So yeah, thank you for joining me, man.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was trying to surmise kind of a bio in the back of my head, before this, but what I love about your stuff, and I kind of share this wealth of like interest in kind of transmedium creation, it's hard to delineate because you're always, to me, there's like a beautiful, like modern jobbing artist aspect, but it's also you're following your muse through everything. So there's that great like pragmatic magic, forgive me for using the pun or the portmanteau, but you're like, it's delineated in that. And your conversations on the Dark Art podcast, I think, are very invaluable for people in the artistic realm, people kind of diving into the, I don't want to use the word spirituality, but there is that aspect, maybe the metaphysics of art and what it means to survive, in this world as an artist.
Yeah, it started off as a podcast, kind of, the podcast, it's a Dark Art Society podcast is what it's called. It started off as me and this guy, Mike Carell, who directed the documentary about me, just like talking about weird stuff, and, then he ended up leaving the podcast, and then it was just me. So I was like, what am I going to do? I'm not good at speaking in general. So I'm especially not good at speaking, being a talking head alone. So I just was like, okay, I'm going to start interviewing artists I know, and all the artists I know, most of them are kind of like dark artists. And so I just started doing dark artist interviews, and then people like that even better. And then at some point, a lot of, talk of the supernatural and magic and stuff like that started happening. And now it's like, it's weird because it's like it's a podcast for artists, but it's also kind of like there's an occult angle to it. So sometimes a lot of people like Mitch Horowitz on, and so we kind of I mean, I just talk about what I'm interested in, and art and spirituality and the occult, or whatever you want to call it, are two things I'm really interested in. So,
and that's, I can't think of a more obvious confluence of things than art and magic,
yeah, right.
like,
I know. Yeah,
um
it's weird.
yeah. And you mentioned, so your ex-partner, he's the person that produced the I paint monsters, that
I like to paint
documentary.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like to
I
paint
like to paint
monsters.
monsters, which is a great documentary, beautifully put together. There is
Thanks.
one major, like, kind of spark in that, and it's you discussing manifestation when you were a kid, like that connection of
Mm-hmm.
you and your mom having
Yeah,
that. And I find that super interesting to see the through line now, and Mitch Horowitz being such a big, figurehead, and like New Thought
right.
and that sort of thing.
That's what.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what tripped me out when I started reading. I heard him on a podcast, and I was like, oh, I kind of relate to this guy. And it turns out we're both close to the same age. We grew up around the same time in the 70s when all this stuff was kind of like in public consciousness. And yeah, that's how kind of how I got connected with him and so interested in his work, because I so related to it because of the way my mom was, and kind of being raised with the new age version of magic, I guess you could say, which is all good. It works. Yeah. It's just a different way of doing it.
No, absolutely. And again, like, your trajectory as an artist, like, you're going to bump into that all the time. Like, I am making manifest, dreams, visions, ideas of things. And all of your stuff is so beautifully, like, intrinsically you, at the same time, which is, it's just a sight to behold. But I was thinking about that the other day, how cool it was to hear that those confluences, started. It wasn't that, you kind of found it on the back end, which a lot of people do, which is cool too.
Yeah.
But
I was
it's always,
lucky in that way.
yeah,
It was always part of my life as long as I can remember. Same with ghosts and stuff.
yeah.
That was like part of the family lore. From my earliest memories, people talking about when my mom saw this ghost and my sister saw this weird spirit on the ceiling, and it was part of like our family history. So none of that stuff was, I don't know, it was just part of my life, my whole life. So I feel really fortunate in that way.
Yeah, there's like a romanticism too, I think, about your stuff, in the sense that there is, how do I put it? It shares that same veneer of childlike wonder and awe, but it's like there's something eldritch about it as well, like something very, deep.
It's funny because years ago, somebody told me my work was very romantic, and I was like, wow, that's the first time anybody's ever said that. And I really agree with it.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a good word. As weird as it seems, if you look at my work, there is like kind of this romantic feeling about it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because I'm doing it from the heart. Like why else would you be painting shit like this? It's like,
Wow.
you gotta love it to paint it, because it's not something that generally a lot of people are going to buy or like, so
Yeah.
maybe that has something to do with it. But I feel like I'm trying to, like, I'm painting all these things that I loved as a kid, which is monsters and stuff and spirits, all this cool kind of stuff that like a lot of little kids, especially in the 70s, were into. And I try and paint it to the best. I try and paint it so well that it kind of like raises its respectability. So it's like people take it seriously, like, like comic books, or especially old horror comics. Those are like the stuff I grew up on. Those are not taken seriously by art academia, really. Those are considered like kid stuff and immature, but to me it meant something. So now I'm trying to recontextualize it in a fine art sense,
Right.
and raise it up, sort of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going to ask you too, because I see that as well, like your actual methods, the fine artistry within your painting themselves, like extremely high level, just the same with your work, and SFX and, creature feature kind of makeup and whatnot. And it seems like a very obvious cross-pollination, especially with the more like modern stuff you're doing, you know, as part of like your installations. But when was that like jump to, you know, really focusing on raising the like fine arts of your craft?
That was I've been drawing and sculpting and everything ever since I was a kid. I was always into it, and I got really interested in effects when I was 12 years old, and then suddenly I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And I put all my effort all throughout high school. I was like focusing on that. All my friends were out partying, and I was sculpting, total nerd out. But my stepfather was a fine artist and an illustrator, and I just saw him struggle so much. He was supporting us, and it was always feast or famine. And so fine art was like, didn't even seem like an option, especially we're talking like 12 years old. What I was like 1980 or something, so there just wasn't a market, especially for what I wanted to do. So, I thought special effects it's practical, and I'm totally into it too. So I kind of went in that direction, and then got a job out of high school, working on some movie stuff, and just continued until around 2000. I started just becoming burnout on the process of, I don't know, I felt like I kind of reached as high as I could go in that field as a sculptor. I became a sculptor, worked on a bunch of big movies and stuff, and I don't know, it's like, how many times can you sculpt whatever, a fat makeup, or an old age makeup, or a gorilla mask, or it's just like there's these things that you are doing over and over, and it's great, and it's a fun job, but I just was like not feeling creatively satisfied. So I think it was around 2000 I started thinking about it, because my I don't know, it was a lot of things. It was like I started getting into different painters like Mark Ryden and Brahm. It's like these books were out around that time, and in the 90s I discovered Beksinski, and I started thinking, wow, this is really amazing artwork. I didn't think you could really make a living doing this kind of artwork. This is what I want to do. And eventually I just kind of was able to start my fine art career while I was working in effects, and it took me a couple of years to kind of get rolling. But once I sold a painting, it was just like, oh my God, I can do this. This is amazing. And then I became like even less in love with makeup effects and more in love with fine art and seeing the potential there. And then I think it was 2009, I was able to leave the industry, or I got laid off, and I just didn't look for another job. I just continued going with my fine art career, and been doing it ever since, pretty much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you definitely came up around the time of like Corman, and like those kind of early trauma. So there was like a sub industry of sorts of like really fun, creative, practical effects things. But you definitely hit a level. I know my partner and good buddy Eric Millar has been a fan of yours forever, and he always cites your work on the Blob remake as some of his favorite stuff. So like you've made these kind of marks, but I get what you're saying. There's a topping off point of an industry in and of itself. Like, just to be jobbing to kind of feed, the pragmatic side, I guess, within such a beautifully, anarchic kind of artistic work it's seldom found, but I can definitely see hitting the cap of, I can't facilitate the muse anymore. Now it's starting to feel. Yeah,
exactly. And there was a lot of, it was a good job. It was a good well-paying job. It was fun. Looking back, I'm kind of like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have left. I was getting paid pretty well, and it was pretty easy, really, because it's like I'd grown up doing it, and so it wasn't like a big effort. But I just had this thing in me, like I'm not being able, I'm not being able to express myself the way I want to. Maybe like when a really cool movie comes around, like the Hellboy movies, like the Hellboy 2, especially, where I got to kind of design this creature. He wasn't in it for more than a few seconds, I think, but it was like Guillermo was totally let me just design this thing on my own, which never happens in the film industry. And stuff like the Tool videos also. Mm-hmm. Those were like, so, okay, this is my thing. I'm feeling totally satisfied doing this. I'm able to kind of express my real vision inside. But those were like 2 projects over 15 or 20 years, it's like they don't come around that often. It's
right.
It's usually
like big money and backing, definitely combined with giving you free reign.
Yeah. So I always say if there were more Adam Jones or Guillermo del Toro's, if that's what the industry was like, then I probably would have never left. But it wasn't like that. So so I just thought, I was going to sculpt. I was going to start sculpting in a fine art context. Basically, these paintings I'm doing, but as 3-dimensional sculptures, realistic busts, which I am presenting them in a fine art context. And I did the first one, and I was just like, it came out just like I wanted. It's a sculpture called Soft Spot. You could look it up on Google, and it just took too long, and it was too expensive, and it was hard to sell, and I had to charge a lot for it because it took so much effort. So I just like, okay, that's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to make a living doing this. So I'm going to switch to painting. And so I switched to painting and started teaching myself to paint because I had a drawing background and a little bit of painting experience. And so I was able to teach myself to do that just because it was more practical. And then I fell in love with the oil painting process, and I love it.
So like if I may ask, like how old were you? Like where were you in your life when you decided, I've got to go full throttle with the painting if I want to, make ends meet, but also kind of service the muse, as I said,
Yeah, I was like 30. I think I was 33 when I made the decision to be a fine artist, and probably, it was around 33, I think.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I just bought a house. I think my wife says it in the documentary. So it was kind of crazy. Yeah. She was super supportive. And so it was crazy looking back at it. I had no savings or anything. It was insane. It was an insane leap of faith. But I
feel that's kind of what you need. I know. And the reason why I asked that is because like I'm constantly up in arms about that. There's this like, kind of forever struggle about, listen, I don't want to be the starving artist anymore, but I can't help but create these things and go and bust for it, and you finding that, I don't know, just that medium of, hey, I can delineate it at least to where, I can survive off of it, but I can still, service what I need to is remarkable. And I know Mitch Horowitz has said, before he had mentioned that, he didn't write his first book until he was 40. Right. So there's a lot of this understanding of, this kind of, maybe, I don't want to say later years, but there's this general understanding, if you don't have it by this time, that you're not going to get it. And that's just not true.
No. There's a lot of, there's a lot of examples of, I forget who, there's like famous directors like that, didn't direct a movie until they're in their 50s and stuff like this. And, actors that finally made it when they're in their 50s and 60s and stuff. So I think it's, that's just typical mainstream culture ideas that you have to have everything figured out. But in your 20s, and it's like, it's just not true.
Yeah, because they need those seeds for their own industry.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I love that. And I mentioned to you before that there's always this pragmatism side of you, and that you're always willing to work with or commune with mediums. that will assist both of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have your one-off, it's like we all do. We have our moments where you have to be bullheaded and everything's telling you no, you're gonna go broke.
Right.
You got to do those too, but like those middle times, how do I construct a life, right?
Yeah.
And support family. And I've always really appreciated you discussing that, especially for modern artists to hear.
Yeah. That's the Dark Art Society podcast is very much like I've never set out to have any kind of format, really. It just kind of is one of those things that naturally developed and just happened, kind of. Of just wanting to do something like this for fun and help promote my artwork, and then it just turned into its own thing, and I just keep following it. But the thing that I feel like I'm only good at just having like honest conversations. I'm not the kind of person that can write down a script and ask questions in that way. It just won't work for me. I won't be able to do it. I'll come off like a phony or something. And so like the only thing I have to offer is just being myself. That's it. That's all I got. So I just kind of approached it that way. And it's a huge issue in my life and every artist's life that I know, is that we're always struggling for money. And so it comes up naturally because it's something that, we have to think about every day, and people don't like to talk about it or think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad to think about it. And I'm just like, it should be it should be like, we should all be trying to make a lot of money because we are the people that should have the money, because if we had all the fucking money, the world would be a better place, because we're not assholes, and we're not going to take, we don't want to take advantage of people. And it's like, I understand money can be a corrupting force, but it's like, we're just, and we're not looking to be, I don't know one artist, a friend of mine, that is looking to be a huge multi-millionaire. We're just looking to cover costs so we can keep doing our thing and live comfortably. And it's like, I just feel like that's a good thing for the world too. So I feel like we should encourage each other to be financially successful. And it's like, I even feel weird saying that now, because we're so, you know what I'm saying? It's
in our bones. Yeah. It's in our bones to have a weird relationship with it.
I know.
And I totally get it. And it's something that I'm coming around, I think this day and age, vulnerability is almost like a revolutionary act in and of itself, to come out and be like, hey, I'm doing everything I can to consort, things that mean something to me, but I'm struggling, instead of painting this picture that everything's working out and everything's,
it flies in the face of Instagram influencers and stuff. It's like that whole game is like, look at how great my life is. And it's like, I don't know, fuck, if that's what you have to do, then I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it.
And so in that process, I think one of the big things that comes up for both of us are kind of partnerships in a way, like these boons along the road that help fortify or even help feed your own creative gusto and sustain a little bit, like your relationship with Tool, right? And especially the way you were able to jump not only from the video, like SFX stuff, but to actually doing fine art for them as well. How does a relationship, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, I have so many friends that are huge, Tool heads. But how did that symbiosis kind of generate?
Yeah, that was through the makeup effects industry. I met Adam Jones, the guitar player and the director of the videos, working on, I think it was Swamp Thing, the Cable series.
I love that one.
In the 90s. And so we just kind of hit it off because, we liked, different music, and we jammed one time, like, we were both trying to start bands. And so we had a lot of common interests. Anyway, next thing I know, he had just come to work at the shop where I was kind of like a main guy, and I was there all the time. And he was floating around. He, you know, we in effects, you jump around to different shops unless you're lucky and you get a kind of a permanent position somewhere. But most people bounce around, and so he was working at the shop I was working at, and anyway, he was there for, I don't know, a few weeks or a couple months or something, and we became friends. Then he went back, I guess, to another shop, and just all of a sudden I hear that he quit the industry, and he's, a couple of years later, he's got this amazing band that's super popular. And so we kind of stayed in touch a little bit here and there. And then he asked me to work on one of the videos, called me up, asked me to kind of like do some fill-in work almost on the Stinkfist video.
Right.
Just come and he wanted me to sculpt this back tumor puppet for someone, and then go on set and do some makeup application for a day or two. And and so that was the start of it. And then after that, I did the effects for all their videos. After that, the makeup effects and puppets and stuff, and ended up doing some gig posters in the last few years, and just odds and ends, stuff for their website, their old website back in the day, and animations and digital stuff. So
yeah, I like touching on them in regards to what we were talking about, because they're definitely a prism of like carving out something themselves,
totally,
and pushing on. I mean, they're industrious folks.
Yeah.
So,
they're super successful. They've done it like totally without had their own vision. The drummer's totally like into magic too, so you gotta wonder, he must have been doing some good magic to be able to have 10 years between albums and still be a huge band.
Right.
I'm always thinking, it's like, I bet you Danny did something when they first started, because I don't care how amazing a band you are, it's like that's incredible to be able to wait 10 years between albums and still have that kind of fan base. It's amazing. I mean, there's no other band like that I know of.
I mean, Maynard with Jerome, and the winery, and like just like having this to use the word again, like the symbiosis of projects that are fulfilling, but also industrious. Is just it's like very it's inspiring, but I find it so interesting, and I'm so curious about, I think, as we were talking earlier, I think I grew up with a really bad relationship with money. Like,
me too.
Really didn't have it, and anytime I do have it, I give it away. It makes me uncomfortable, kind of a thing. And now as I'm getting older, I'm trying to, you start to look at things in more of that pragmatic sense of, how do I don't want to use, I'm not talking about like fiscally investing, but more of like an energy investment into it, and, understanding the cycles and rhythms, and, especially for modern artists such as yourself, it's still like an arithmetic that is beyond me in ways,
Yeah. It's, the funny thing is, like, I do, whatever you want to call it, manifestations, magic. I do sigil.
I was going to ask,
classic, sigil stuff. I've kind of developed a painting version of sigils magic that worked when I tried it. And it's the funny thing is, like, that's all for the most part, other than like, the meditation and trying to find a relationship with the muse and, God, or whatever you want to call it, and just being connected spiritually. The practical uses of magic that I do, it's always money. It's always money. And it's like, again, I feel like a scumbag saying it. Like, it just makes me feel like, oh man, that's such a horrible thing to say, but it's the truth.
No,
and it's like, that's sort of, I think that's like magic. That's part of the reason magic is such an important resource for us as artists, especially as broke ass artists, is that we can use that to get money. It's like, why are we all broke? Why are we not using magic to get the money we need? We should all be doing that. That should be part of everybody's thing. We need to get over it. We need to get over it because, like I said, it's like we need the money not because we're greedy. We need the money because we're not greedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need the money because we're the people that would be like helping our friends and doing the right things with it and not being shitheads about it because we're not all about money. Otherwise, if we were all about money, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's fascinating you bring that up because there is something about, I guess in a way we consider money the other, and like, you know, magic, if it's, you know, utilized to consort or commune with the other and to understand it, to have a rhythm with it. Yeah, I guess people could delineate it into power dynamics, but it's not really about that. It really is a sustainability. It's like a function.
It's survival, you know?
Yeah, it's survival.
Like we need it to survive. It's kind of like food and whatever. We live in America, and it's like if you didn't have money, you're totally screwed. That's all there is to it. Nothing you can say is going to change that. You know? So it's like, okay, we've got this resource here, so we should be using it. And it's like sigils are the easiest. Anybody can do a sigil. Anytime I see an artist friend of mine complaining about sales or struggling online, I'm like, do a sigil. Just do a sigil.
Yeah,
it's easy and it works. You know, and people like think you're crazy if they're not into it, and then other people try it and it works, and they get back to me. They're like, oh man, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, there's that old saying. There's, you know, everybody's first sigil works. It's the second one they got to work hard on.
Right. It's true. It's so weird. Yeah, beginner's luck, I guess. It is kind of true, but
opens the door. But is there like a correlation with you? I know, you know, speaking manifestation, everyone you've talked to on the Dark Art Society podcast, like, is there a correlation or a study into maybe like the Austin Osman Spare sigilization art world? Is it more kind of a cunning kind of, you know, ingrained idea of magic that you're expelling?
Yeah, I mean, it's the simplest. I just figure it's like the simplest form is the Austin Osman Spare approach. That one, Grant Morrison had that video that went viral, and it's like that's all. It's all there. It's simple. But you know, that's what's so cool about that's why I love chaos magic, is like you can kind of make stuff up and you know, I just love, as artists, it's just like it makes sense, you know, that you can kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me to really, I don't know, get super structured with magic, you know, and it just feels more natural to kind of like creatively design a ritual or a spell in a way. It just seems like that personalizes it and makes it stronger. But that, I think that as a base model works great. Yeah. You know,
if you, and like you infusing it, you know, in art, you were talking about painting sigils, and, you know, I think for folks like us that, you know, don't think of them as matter of fact, right? And the idea of like a chaos magic sigil, what's a process like for, you know, creating one, and, you know, an artistic sigil, a fine art sigil?
You know, it's funny. The one I don't know. I probably have done it more than once, but the basic idea I had was like, okay, I design the sigil. I get, you know, write out the usual thing. You write out the thing that you want, cross out the consonants and repeating letters and all that stuff. Make the sigil, and then I paint it. Before I paint anything on the canvas, I paint the sigil on, with the intention that like that as I paint the painting, it takes the sigil away. So it's kind of like the burning of this, you know, you should destroy the sigil at the end. So as you paint it, you're destroying the sigil, and your intention is like all the effort you're putting into the painting is going towards that goal, is going, focusing on that sigil. Because I was thinking, I put so much energy in every artist I know, put so much energy, you know, any kind of art, you put a lot of energy into that. You're a lot of focus and energy, you know, intention to make this thing look amazing. And so you're constantly focused on it. And so the idea was kind of like, hey, I'm painting this thing anyway. Why not put like some kind of magic intention behind the the creative energy that's going into it.
Yeah, focus it a bit.
Yeah, and because it's like essentially, if you're trying to make a living with your artwork is a sigil, a money sigil. If you're trying to like sell your work to live, it's already a money sigil because you're trying to make this thing amazing. It's just in a kind of a different way, more of a traditional approach. But I feel like it can kind of supercharge it if you put you kind of combine it with the classic sigil technique.
Yeah, I've always thought too, because breaking away maybe from the matter of fact of like that sigilized method that chaos magic has very much instilled in like the popular conscious, which is fantastic. I think my favorite part are delineating, basically distilling stories of the documentary of the atmosphere like into an artwork. And as you're saying, it's channeling that energy. So for music, the sigil would be the choreography of how the instruments are laid about and like me working around them. Or this video sigil would be it's distilling that story. It's the intentional elements of even the technology. It's like no stone is left unturned. It's very much this hyper manual, right?
Yeah.
Of how something is created.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about that simple idea of an art sigil, because as we said in the beginning, there's really nothing more matter of fact about magic than art itself. Creation of art.
Yeah, it is like it was kind of a revelation to me. I don't know who I heard say it when I started getting into, because I was always into this stuff my whole life, and it wasn't until like around, I don't know, over the years I've always been learning different things. You pick up books here and there, and I had this kind of like a creative visualization new age technique that I was using all throughout my life. But I started looking into like ceremonial magic and stuff like around the pandemic, and really kind of like, okay, I know this stuff works. I know it's real. I'm going to just try and learn. It was like going to school, you're interested in biology kind of because you're a nerd. And then you're like, okay, I got to go to school and see how this is taught to really understand it. So I kind of took that approach. And, what were we talking about? What was the question you asked me? I totally lost my train of thought.
Imbuing art, with like.
Sorry. Yeah. And then, it was, eventually there was I heard someone, it was Alan Moore say that, I don't remember who it was. Could have been Crowley, could have been Alan Moore, but it was like, magic and art are basically the same thing. And, I'd never really thought about it like that, because as artists, we take this for granted. This is something we've been doing since we were a kid, and you don't really think of it anything other than like, oh, I'm having fun making this.
Right. It's truly second nature.
Yeah. But you don't think of it as like, wow, it's kind of a magical process, creating something from nothing out of your imagination. You're literally, thinking of something or channeling something and putting it physically so other people can see it. You're taking that out of your mind. And it's kind of a cool way to look at it, because it really is a magical process, creating art.
And also like the vector of what you're translating, kind of unspoken or ushered by the receiver, right? If like you're the agent, it's almost like that ESP connection where the art form itself becomes the method of reception in a way.
Yeah. And it's like, I've also heard it said like, when you get to a certain point with magic, it's not about getting things. It's about the main point. It's like you can use it as a tool to get things, but the main point is you do it because it's who you are, and you like to do it. And that's basically painting for me, art. It's like you're doing it for its own sake. It's just
Absolutely.
that we live in this world where you got to figure out how to live on that, or have another job. If you were going to do that, whatever, you have to figure out how to navigate the world financially. But it's it's you know, if you think about it, for people who don't paint or don't make music and don't have that kind of like natural ability, it's magic to them. You know, they're like, how do people do that? Oh my God. And
Sure.
it's like, you know, just like I look at mathematicians and I'm like, how do they do that? It's like
investment bankers.
Yeah.
Like how the
hey, they're doing it. That's
yeah.
the thing. It's like everything is magic. Everything is magic. They're doing money magic way better than we are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like we should maybe get our shit together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, you reminded me of this. Sorry, am I echoing a little? Apologize.
No.
But you reminded me of this kind of aspect of it, especially with I think we have there's a means of us, there's a second body of which we inhabit, you know, and where everything it's like a supra self, right? You can call it the HGA or you can call it the other, but there's this obvious like communion conversation always happening. Maybe it's a little voice in your head, maybe it's but it's like there's this innate sense of a mission or like service, even if it goes nowhere. It's like building the cathedral to nothing in a sense, you know what I mean? Like there's this, and I've always been trying to pinpoint it, and I guess folks can, you know, term it the muse or, you know, whatever. But what I love is the daredevilness of like you jumping from a very sweet set, you know, hey, I am working in a very artistic field, but it doesn't feel right. Like that urge to rip yourself out of that. It's there's this thing I've been thinking of like if you're really passionate about something, think about what the worst day could be, you know, doing that thing. And if you feel like you can survive it, then yeah, maybe you should be listening to that. And
yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's I you know, I have to say I'm typical in the way a lot of artists are with imposter syndrome and things like that, and thinking about things I said that looked where I sounded really dumb at a party I went to or a show for like 2 weeks after, you know, typical overly sensitive. But I have always had, I don't know what it is. I've always had this really strong belief in myself as an artist, even when I was a little kid. Like I always had the confidence, like I believed in what I was doing, like ever since I was a kid. Like I wasn't afraid to show my art. I wasn't afraid to be in like school art shows. I felt like I was in a band. I was the front man, and I'm like a shy person, especially back then. I was super shy, and it was like, because I was presenting music that I believed in, the artwork I believed in, I didn't feel insecure anymore about myself. It was more like I was standing behind something I believed in that I thought was good. And so I've always had this kind of crazy belief in myself as an artist for whatever reason. So when it came time to like jump ship and not go look for another job, the last time I got laid off in effects, it was just like I just knew I could do it. I knew I could do it. I don't know what else to say other than like, this is insane. I just believed I could do it, and I feel like it was that belief in myself that got me to where I'm doing it full time now. And it's like, you know, not easy. It's definitely not as easy as the job I left, that's for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know, way more creatively fulfilling, and it's, you know, you feel like feel like I'm not wasting my life. That was the big thing in effects. I felt like I was wasting my life because I was putting all this creative energy into stuff that was like may or may not be in a good movie. You know, so many films I worked on that were just like total pieces of crap. That we, you know, we're all the people that get into effects, at least back then, it wasn't about like, oh, this is a good career choice. It was because we were into it. You know, it's a weird, obscure art form, and we were like nerdy monster kids or into horror movies and stuff. And so you build your whole life around it, get in this career, and then it's so disheartening. And then you're putting all your effort. You love it. You're totally into it. You want the movie to be awesome. You want the monster to be awesome. You go the extra mile and try and make this amazing monster no one's ever seen, and then it gets cut from the movie, or the movie sucks, or any number of things that can happen on a film, and having that happen over and over is so disheartening. And then there's a certain point you're like, what am I doing here? I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to retire, and I'm working on these movies that are like, I don't believe in, or they're terrible, and they're insulting to the audience's intelligence. It's like, I don't want to be a part of that,
I know what you mean about even though like the preternatural side of it feels like a bottomless well, right? There is like that disgruntledness, I think, within like the somatic experience, where you're just like, shit, this temporary thing is finite, or like whatever this is, like I am definitely wasting resources, whether that be time or energy. Like, there is that push.
Yeah, it got worse when I started selling too, because then I was like, oh man, I just made these paintings that I thought were cool, and there was no art direction, there was no changing thing because some producer or a studio executive wanted it changed for whatever reason. There was none of that. I did it on my own accord. It's my design, my painting, and someone bought it. And at that point, I was like, oh man, I got to get out of this business. It became even more painful to be in effects.
Yeah.
At that point, because I was seeing like, oh, there's a way out. This can work. And so every day, and so for like 7 years, I was in effects working and trying to get my art, totally focusing all my extra time after work and on weekends on my fine art career. And it was so painful to go drive to work for 7 years, not wanting to be there, like seeing like, oh, it's just out of reach. It's just out of reach, but I can't quite afford it yet. It was rough.
I'm laughing because I'm like literally right there right now.
It's so hard, man.
Yeah. It's brutal.
Yeah. I had a couple moments literally where I was like, I broke down crying in the car in traffic, because traffic is hell out here. And that's really, that's part of what makes working so hell. Yeah. Made it for hell for me. It's like,
Los Angeles Transit. Oof.
Yeah. It's like an hour and a half drive back, and just being like, just getting to that point where like, this is so painful. It's so terrible. I see what I want, and it's just out of my grasp, and I'm just being forced to grind it out every day, driving an hour and then going and doing something I didn't really want to do, and then driving back, and then trying to come up with the energy to create a bunch of artwork to keep the art career going. It was like having 2 jobs for 7 years. Brutal.
My name is Keats Ross. I am the host of PRAGMAGICK, and before we get into the episode, I wanted to do my due diligence to shed some light on a bunch of the wonderful totemic artifacts that we are creating across many a medium, from our collective Be the Hallowed to me personally. One major talismanic journal is my publication of the Divergent Magical Grimoire. Anyone can use it. It is magician operational. It is paradigm operational. There's no distinct current. It is a schema for you to log, create, construct, deconstruct, hell, even ruin the rituals that make your art, that make your day, that make your communion to the other. So you can check this out, as well as t-shirts and fun ephemera from We the Hollowed artist Eric J. Millar, or me, like Dakota Slim, Revel ROZZ, who I just released a new song sigil that I'll be releasing every few weeks or so. That is also accompanied with a Videomantic visualizer, and that'll all build into the debut first highly produced full-length album. Here you know about the PRAGMAGICK podcast or the YouTube channel, and I really, really appreciate you stopping by, giving us some tricky old demonic engagement in these digital rhythms. But a like, a share, a subscribe, all of that tit-for-tat kind of clickety-clack really goes a long way to help support a bunch of magical ephemera of all sorts. So help support the DIY human error punks in fighting this ridiculous, absurd, new high-tech era with some high-touch magics. Thanks for stopping by. Patreon.com/pragmagick. On on.
There was so many good comments about us really diving into the confluence of the artistic struggle, the modern artistic struggle with finances, relationships with money, having to put yourself out there. And it's just such a common and almost ubiquitous thing for anyone in any artistic setting that
it's the problem.
Yeah, and no one really, I think, we talked about this too, just this day and age of showing your best self for this weird alternate egregore of a reality that you sometimes visit, like instead of really like talking about the labor, like the intense sweat equity that goes into not only creating the works, but, the back end, the non-fun stuff,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know you've been working really hard. You got a show coming up in October, and I wanted to talk more about that, but we can talk about the specifics later. But it's a perfect, I think you're in the perfect rhythm to discuss maybe like these creative rituals, like when you have a looming deadline, and there's this big kind of seminal event, like how are you ritualizing your work, your week, like what are your necessities for getting into that zone to produce? I hate that word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's difficult. It's kind of like, I think when you become officially a full-time artist, one of the things you have to learn how to do is to make it happen, whether you're inspired or not, whether you're tired, whether you had to deal with a bunch of business bullshit all day. You have to figure out how to make it happen. And otherwise, you can't wait around for inspiration, all the stuff you always hear. It's like you have to do it when you're supposed to do it, do the thing and do it well. And so I mean, and that's always the case with me. My days are always split between business stuff that I don't want to do, that I have to do, and then usually kind of painting in the second half of the day and the evening. And it's kind of an art to be able to turn everything off and just start creating, so it's funny, my ritual is to put on some old cheesy horror movie that I love, that I've seen a million times, that kind of like sort of occupies my mind and takes it away from what I'm working on. Like it's weird. It's like I don't know if it's because I grew up in the 70s. I was like a TV kid where the TV was always on while I was drawing and
I was too. Yeah,
watching TV and cartoons and stuff. And so I get like a kind of a comfort with the TV on. So I'll put movies on because I love movies. And so and I'll just kind of try and get in that zone I was when I was a kid, when there was no worries and you're just doing it for fun. And it's nothing really more than that. It's not like some big magical act, but it is a ritual. And it really is. And it puts me in the zone. It helps me to create the work and get into it. And I just try and shut everything else out. And sometimes I'll smoke a little weed that helps.
Okay. Yeah. That's my next question. There's a lot, like, I know for you, it's a very kind of usual, almost, just kind of pragmatic, like approach to just getting your butt in the chair, which, I'm a firm believer of as well. And, but there were some things to unpack there, like, why delineate it kind of at the end of the day? Like, how did you discover that maybe the, muse is better to dance with, in the afternoon hours or something,
Yeah. It's definitely my natural rhythm. It's like I get all the stuff. I'm a night person, and I'm always struggling with that because it's hard to live that kind of schedule, especially I have, someone who comes in and helps me with the business stuff in the day. And so it's, I have to be up by 9 when they get here in the morning. So I can't get too crazy. Like I can't do what I probably would if I didn't have any limitations put on me. I probably would be a person that works until sunrise.
Okay.
I've always been like that. It's just like since I was a
Yeah.
little kid. And every time during the summers when there was no school, I would stay up all night and make art. And so it's just, you know, it's just in me. I just feel it at night more.
Mhm.
It's same with any kind of spiritual work or tripping or any of that stuff. It's always been like night is where, to me, is where the magic is.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
That's
I
where
just,
things are the most dim, for sure.
Yep. Everything's quiet and it just feels like, I don't know. I'm a night person. So that's kind of how it works out. And I end up starting later in the day and it usually goes till 12 or 1 in the morning. You know, if I'm being good and there's not crazy deadlines, I try and get to bed at 11 or something, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm painting up until that.
I love this because I do the same. Whether it's in old radio shows is a big thing that I always have on.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if I'm working on music, like there'll be something until I'm recording. I'll shut it off, but I'll put it back on for, you know, writing or anything. I used to have a little VHS TV, and I would just, you know, cycle VHSs. But there's something comforting about that consistent hum. Or like familiarity breaks your brain for a second, then you go back in. So I totally get it.
Yeah, it's a trip. You know, do you know Beksinski, the painter?
Mm-hmm, of course, yeah.
Yeah, he said he could not stand the sound of silence. I'm not like that, but he said that he would. I think he would turn the. He always had classical music playing, blasting, and he said he'd rather hear the sound of a vacuum cleaner than silence. Like silence filled it with dread.
I love
that was kind of funny.
It makes sense to me. I was thinking too, just even in my meditation practice, like I'm largely in a shower, which is roaring loud with water.
Yeah,
you know?
That's funny. I have a friend who my friend Josh does that too. He kind of does his meditation in the shower.
Yeah. A liminal bath kind of a thing, but yeah, there's something super. I love that you know, it has that always. You said like since you were a kid, and I share that with you. I was born in the late '80s, but like same. Parents were never around, split, you know, divorced, like classic.
Yeah,
raised by the television, latchkey kid, you know.
Yeah, same. I was exactly the same way.
I think that there's something there about. You know, that comfort of media. It's like you're feeding. It's almost like an Ouroboros of you're recharging from the things that inspire you to actually, you know, spitting it on paper. Yeah.
I think it was sort of like a companionship thing too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we were latchkey kids. You came home after school. Dad was living somewhere else. My mom was working. She was a teacher, so she wasn't there. Brother and sister were older, so they were off doing whatever. So it's like there's a way to, I don't know, between that and your animals, it's a way of not feeling alone, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful actually. And there is something that's like we're kind of the like cathode ray generation, you know? We're growing up.
Totally.
And I love that there's so much to unpack with just that aspect of it and how much it's kind of trained us, even maybe socially too, or otherwise, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But are there? You mentioned like, you know, maybe sometimes herb or whatever, but are there other necessities you found? Like even like if someone was to ask you, you know, I'm struggling with finding a ritual like to get my butt in the chair, and you know, obviously my first advice would be, well, you got to experiment. You got to get your butt in the chair at any time to figure out when it works the best, you know?
Right.
One of my favorite, something that I've always carried and I shared was Nick Cave talks about how he will go 9 to 5. He will go to an office, whether or not he's inspired. A lot of days he just sits on the couch staring at the ceiling, but like he has to be there in case something happens, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And, but yeah, how did you kind of fortify? Are there other elements to kind of get you in the mood that you find you need? Caffeine to, you know.
Yeah, there's always that.
Yeah.
There's always coffee. There's, I like, it's simple. It's some incense. I got a candle on my altar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very simple stuff, but I love doing it. I love it. It's like, people that, that what they say about magic, like, the really great magicians are people that they're doing it because they love it.
Yeah.
And it's not so much about getting results. It's more
Yes.
about, it's who they are. It's what they love to do. And they do it for its own sake. And I feel like that's how it is for me with artwork,
Yeah.
and that is my magic. That's the thing that I'm just doing it for its own sake. I would be doing it anyway if I wasn't getting paid or selling stuff. So, when you're doing something you love like that, I don't think you need to coax yourself into getting motivated. At least
Sure.
that's for me. It's always been like, I can't wait to get to it. I want to get all this other bullshit out of the way so I can get to the painting part, because that's the part I love, so there's like little practical things. If it gets too messy, I'm a really, really messy person. And if it gets too messy, I'll clean my studio. That always feels good and helps me feel kind of refreshed. But
I do the same thing. Yeah. A little brain break. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, but it's like, I have a high tolerance for messes is the thing. It's super high. It's like, that's the difference between me and a hoarder, is that I have a tolerance where I can't take it anymore.
Right.
I have to clean. Whereas hoarders, they don't have that tolerance, or they don't have a point where they're like, I got to clean. They just get past that point. But I have a breaking point where you're like walking around and everything's falling over because there's so much junk everywhere. And I stop everything, just do a massive cleaning over an hour or two or something, and I'm like, okay, I feel good again.
Well, that was going to be my next question too, about like set and setting. I know for me, it's extremely important to have what I call the dimming room, which is like this place where not only can I just be alone, be myself, like get away, but it's also like an engine for creativity. I've got every tool I need, cameras and instruments and whatever. Like how important has it been to kind of get your set and setting sorted?
Yeah, you're describing my studio. That's what I call my studio, which is my kid's used to be his bedroom. It's just a little bedroom in the house.
Yeah.
And it's full of all the junk I collect that I love, and every tool I need. And it's like kind of like it's kind of like a cockpit to a spaceship. That's what it feels like. Like, I'm in this chair. This is the chair I use. I'm facing this way. This is sort of like the window to outer space or whatever, you're navigating.
I love it. Yeah.
And my tools are here. My paints are over here. I got all my brushes over here. I got my computer right here in case I need reference. I got a couple of screens, and it's just like I feel like getting in a cockpit in like Alien or something.
Yeah.
Sitting and getting ready. And I always feel like that when I get in. It's like, okay, I'm ready to work. And it's I don't know. There's something about the spaceship piloting thing that kind of the parallel that kind of works with painting at an easel, I think.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, I call them battle stations.
Yeah, totally.
It's like that. It's like you're a gunner, where it's like, yeah, here's the computer work. Here's where all the analog cassette tape stuff, It's like, and you're just turning around and
and it feels so good to have all that stuff ready, and where it is for the most part, and knowing that you can just make all kinds of cool stuff in this little space.
So when you get, because I know like there is an element because you are, not only a successful artist, but you have to, organize your day business, all the other stuff outside of this, battle station or this cockpit, right? Like when you get when you get hit by an inspo punch, are you quickly doodling it like in something and then kind of reserving it for the studio later? Like how does that work if you're not there to kind of receive it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll just take a note in whatever's easiest. If I'm sitting at a computer and I have this amazing idea, I'll sketch it in Photoshop. If I'm laying in bed at night and I just have my phone and I get this idea, I'll write it, or I'll try and like, draw it on a note or whatever on a, they have a like draw function with your finger. It looks like crap, but as long as I can get like a stick figure so I remember the idea, or a piece of paper, any scrap of paper, I just need to get it down because I'll forget, because I have my memory's not very good.
Well, I was gonna say, because I think you mentioned dreams being kind of a big engine for a lot of this stuff, and like a little bit.
Well, no, it's like it's dreams are super important, but to me, but they're not. I almost never have a dream that's like, oh, I got to paint that.
Okay.
Almost never. Like the monsters are. When I have dreams about monsters, it's like they're never really cool. They're always like paper mache monsters or something that you see in like a really crappy sideshow carnival when you're a kid. It's really bizarre, and they're only scary because there's a feeling around it in the dream. It's just nonsensical, weird, really weird, and it's kind of a bummer that I don't like dream up these amazing creatures that would be so cool.
That's harrowing because that might be evidence that you're not creating your dreams. Like you're visiting somewhere. You're like, I would have designed this monster way.
I remember I had one that was so terrifying, and it was like, those the French fry goblins from McDonald's. It was like one of those with no legs, though. It was like a dome, and it was all like paper mache, and it was covered with dried, crusty mustard. And then it like went up the wall, and it was traveling on the ceiling, and it was big, like 3 or 4 feet. Like it was coming to me, and it was like so terrifying in the dream. This stupid paper mache French fry goblin covered with dry mustard.
It's absurd. That's your limit, the hoarder limit coming at you.
Right. It's like it's like, I don't know. I feel like because all of my artwork is so weird that my dreams are so weird, they're like beyond normal weird. To the point of like stupid paper mache French fry goblins with dried mustard on them.
That's
which is
true.
Like a whole other level of weird.
Like almost rubber bands, because you do spend so much time in like the imaginarium of like really, grandiose like creatures and ideas, and when you go to sleep, your brain's like, okay, what do we got?
There's nothing cool left. Let's just do something really stupid.
or like the super self knows to keep the good stuff for when you're awake.
That's true. That's true. I'm like interacting with that stuff, the good stuff, on a daily basis, so it makes sense in a way. I never thought about it.
And like you obviously you have kind of a lore too. There's a world that one can visit, like even from your books that you've put out and all of this. Like, have you like been a cartographer of sorts to this like place? Like, is there a running kind of story? And
that's the weird thing about the last book I produced was called Dystopia, and it's do you have that?
I don't.
Oh, I gotta send you a copy.
I would love that.
It's epic. It's like 400 pages. It's huge.
My partner Eric Millar, who's a big fan of yours, I think he was part of the Kickstarter. So
okay, cool. I hope he got ask him if he got his book, because if he needs to get in touch with me. I'm still getting stuff out for that Kickstarter. And it's been so long that Kickstarter won't let me mass message everybody.
Oh, interesting.
And it's been so long that people have moved, so I can't be sending this book that cost me $50 to produce.
Right.
That I only charged $40 for. I mean, I lost my shirt on that whole thing, but
so
I can't afford to send it to an address that I'm not sure if it's correct. So I'm kind of waiting for people to contact me so I can send them the book. So ask him if he got his book. If I'll look him up and send him his stuff. But anyway, so Yeah, the dystopia book started out as during the making of the documentary, I Like to Paint Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to the director about, so many people interviewed said it's like, oh, it's like Chet's painting this world, and the characters seem like related, like they all come from the same place. And I heard that so many times in the interviews from people that I really thought about it, and I'd heard that from before the documentary, but I started thinking about it, and it's like totally unintentionally, I've been building this world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say by mistake, but not intentionally. Just like painting, my approach to painting since I first started, because I was getting out of the film industry where I was super art directed for everything, sculpting for horror movies and stuff, that I wanted to like a pure art expression. So my thought was, I'm going to try and get back to where I was when I was a kid, when I was just doing it for its own sake, and I wasn't having any kind of wasn't trying to get a message out. I wasn't trying to do anything other than art for its own sake, because I love to do it. And so the thing that I did was paint these monsters, right? And I wasn't thinking anything beyond, I want to make a cool painting. Oh, this would be cool. This cool monster would be cool. It's very simple, kind of dumb, but I was like totally following my own creative impulse without thinking about it or censoring it. So years go by, and I have this realization that, maybe there is kind of a world there. And so then the director started, we started talking about, like, I should make a book, like a field guide.
Yeah.
And he's a writer. And so he started interviewing me about every painting that I had painted. And once he started interviewing me, it's like, oh, this guy he does this, and he's holding this, and what he's holding is this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what this means over here. And so we just took all the information of every painting, of what I was sure intuitively. And I didn't even realize I'd never thought about it with most of these paintings, that I knew that this guy was carrying this briefcase to the king of this territory. It was weird. Right. It was totally like I had the story, but I'd never verbalized it. I'd only gotten it out and through a painting, and I never thought about it. It was this weird intuitive process. So he interviewed me, categorized all the stuff that I knew for sure about these paintings. And then once it's all listed out, it's like, oh, there is a whole world there, a story, and it all makes sense. Mm-hmm. And there's good guys and bad guys. And it was weird. It was totally weird. It was like, I feel like this is the first book that was ever kind of written in reverse in a way,
right?
Because there is no story. We made a point to not. I'm saving the story for like a comic book or something, because there is a story there that I kind of discovered in discovering the world. But we just did it like it's like an art book disguised as a field guide. It was the concept. And so it's like a field guide, like a dungeon master guide, or National Geographic guide to, the deepest depths of sub-Saharan Africa or something. It's like, all the different characters and animals and stuff. And then just put everything in categories, figured out what type of creature this is. And, just presented it like an art book. And in the meantime, though, it was like a story developed in my mind as to, a basic storyline. So it's like, I have this story. I'm just waiting for the next, whenever I get a chance to kind of like do it probably as a comic book or graphic novel or something.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
And it's like the dystopia book is kind of like the Dungeon Master Guide for dystopia. It's like for that world. It's like the rule book, sort of the Bible.
Should even do just an RPG, a TTRPG with it.
there are. That's
and like
that may be in the works.
I could see people like, what is it, like Warhammer, like painting your
totally, man.
Figures. Yeah, that's awesome.
I know. Yeah. There's so many places to go with it.
But I love that, because I know you mentioned that it's in reverse, but to me it feels like the purest tether of a story. And I was wondering, when you're getting interviewed about, these magnanimous creatures that you've created, like, are you just off the cuff, like whatever comes to you, that's your explanation of it? Or were there elements of like, no, this is from something,
it's like I start with just an image with no verbally,
Right.
not like I'm going to paint a guy with a gun and a gas mask. So how does that look? It's more like I'm either doodling to get ideas out, just mindlessly doodling until I see something that I think is interesting, and then I kind of develop that, or it's like I get kind of an idea in my head of, oh, this would look cool, and that's it. But as the thing develops, I just kind of intuit that, oh, this is what's happening in the painting. And a lot of times I don't even know until the painting's done, which
Right.
it's crazy to me that I feel like as artists, we're so lucky to have access to some part of our psyche to express it. And
Mhm.
then it kind of tells us something about ourselves. You kind of use it as a kind of,
It's a mirror.
kind of as a mirror in some
Or
way.
journalism of the self. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. So it's all very, it's never coming up with a story for the idea. It's always the story's already there, and I either am not sure what it is, or usually what it is I'm sure certain aspects I'm sure of. I just intuitively know. And then if I don't know, it's like, oh, it's kind of mysterious to me too. I don't really know what that means.
Well, it's beautiful because you're voyaging into these lands purely. There's not like a pretense about any of it. Everybody's along for the ride with you.
Right.
Like you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know
Yeah. I don't know
where
what's
yeah. And like that's exciting to me. That's the kind of work that I love, because it is discovering another world, because you wouldn't, I mean, maybe an expedition of a world that hasn't been, field guided yet, right? But you are the
right.
person that's backpacking through this like mauve zone or whatever of, beasts and automatic, what I love is like they're almost automatic beasts, like automatic drawing, because that's kind of
Right.
where they're coming from. And you're like, oh, okay, well, this one looks like this and it's from this area. And,
Right.
and of course, like that to me is almost the purest like form of narrative construction,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's it's like with my artwork, when I was younger, I was in bands, and I always
Mhm.
tried to be like, emulate bands I liked, like Dead Kennedys, or I went through a phase where I liked like really into Cat Stevens,
Nice.
like folk
Yeah.
stuff, and I've my musical tastes are varied, but I was always kind of like held, especially like Dead Kennedys. I held them up as like the paragon, and
Mhm.
so I remember trying to. My lyrics were influenced by that, so it was like super political and very Dead Kennedys in many ways, and it just was. It's like I was good at songwriting, but I felt like conceptually it always kind of fell flat because I
Yeah.
wasn't doing my own. It wasn't my own thing. It was like, I'm not good at like Jello Biafra. I'm not good at doing satire of politics and stuff. It's not where my talent lies.
Right.
And I'm not like great verbally, or I'm a visual person.
Mm.
And so I think my talent is I have this ability to visually express this thing, whatever it is. I'm able to express this thing that's expressing itself through me, and I'm able to
Yeah.
let it out and not get in the way of it. And so every painting has been generally like, if I step aside, I'm not smart enough to come up with the idea that I may potentially come up with. Like, I've had paintings that I consider like, wow, that's super clever. It's a great idea, very successful, but I stumbled upon it,
Yeah.
but that's my angle. It's like, I know I'm not smart enough to come up with this, intellectually come up with this stuff. It's
Before, yeah.
but there
Yeah.
is a part of me inside that's like a genius. But
Sure.
I feel like it's not me. It's like this other thing. And it's like, I'm just like, okay, Chet, you guys step
Yeah.
back, because you're a dummy. Let the thing do its thing. And
The
so like,
daemon. Yeah.
yeah. And so the art of that is learning how to let go and not imposing your will onto it, but serving the thing.
Yeah.
Like it's your job. That's why if you're going to be an artist, you have to be a badass artist. You have to have your chops. You have to have your skills down, because you have this gift of this higher thing coming through you, and you have to serve it. You have to like put it above you and be like, okay, art thing, I am going to express you to the best of my ability. And if I fail, that means I failed you. So I have to practice. I have to make sure I'm really good at what I'm doing. It has to be amazing, because, it's like a religious thing or a spiritual thing,
Right.
Like,
you need to get it to be as sound as possible to
the best
in there.
Yeah. And to the best of your ability. That's your job. I think that's kind of like when they talk about service, it's like, that's the service, I think. I mean, some people like want to go and feed the homeless. My wife takes stuff to the homeless all the time. It's like, I appreciate that but I feel like, you got to be of service to the thing in you that you're meant to be doing.
Yes.
That's for me, that's the thing I'm meant to do. So I can't slack off and do it half-ass. I have to really, honor it. So that it's like, becomes it's a spiritual practice in that way.
It's communion.
Like, yeah, totally. It's everything that you get from magic or religion. It's the same thing. It's just, this is the easel is the altar, and the painting, for me as a painter, painting the image is honoring God or whatever, or the
ink
thing.
is the offering. I love that.
And so, it's just like being imagine, put it in the parallel of being a good Christian or whatever, a good altar boy, or if you're Catholic, doing everything correctly and not screwing up to honor God, to do the rituals perfectly. That's like what I feel like I'm doing with the artwork. In my weird little art system.
I love it, because like and that's the thing, your daemon or whatever is versed in like these constructual layers of that skill is so needed to
right. Yeah. And it's not. And it's like, that's why I like all kinds of art.
Yeah.
Some art doesn't require that. And it's because if that's their thing, some people are amazing at like collage or abstract art. If that's their thing, that's their daemon, that's their thing that's trying to get out. And it's like, and that's a whole different skill set to be good at abstract art or be good at collage or whatever. So it's like, you have to figure out what the thing is and serve it, which is basically like discovering your true will in magic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
As an artist, you have to find out what is the thing I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. How do I serve that to the best of my ability? And then that's your job.
You hit the nail on the head with that, just this communion, this dance with it, and needing to serve it by, representing it in this somatic reality as close to as possible as you're getting the message or whatever. I mean, the reason why I know how to do anything is because I had a inspiration or a communion with something that said, hey, I'm going to need, whatever, like I'm going to need an instrument or a certain instrument that I haven't played before, you know what I mean? Or, whatever, like whatever tool. And it was like, okay, well, now I got to learn this thing to the best of, to at least get this one out, and hopefully it doesn't ask for, too much harder. But that's, my whole life has been like that. Like, oh, I have a great, cello line in my head. It's like, how the hell am I going to do that?
Totally, man. Yeah. It's like whatever creative, it's like you let that, your creative impulse be your guide. That's how you let the spirit in, I guess,
Absolutely. And I think, and you're right. Like, everybody's daemon talks differently. I think mine's pretty ramshackle, but I do love that yours is so beautifully versed in kind of that, very, very 4D two-dimensional aspect of visual art. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so, like, of course, like the fundamentals and all of this stuff, of course you were inspired to get really good at it, because you're like, I if I can't draw what's in my brain, then what am I doing here? You know?
Yeah. It's just, it's exactly. It's kind of like, yeah, it's strange. It's strange. It's like, you know, you have a vision for your artwork.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's your music or whatever, you have a vision of how you want it to be, how good you want it to be. And if you don't hit that mark, you're like, it's like your offering to God wasn't good enough. You know, God is, which is the song or the painting, that's God. And the representation that you want to share with other people, you're going to bringing this spirit out to share with other people, to inspire them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a shitty job, then you're not doing enough for the amazing thing that you
choked on the communion cup.
When it's like, you know, we're so lucky to have that. It's an honor.
Intrinsic too.
But but it's like I don't think honor was the word I'm thinking of. It's privilege. It's a privilege to have that, because a lot of people don't have that, you know, and or maybe it would be a lot more work to get that for some people, you know. So it's a privilege, and you have to honor that, you know, show that appreciation by doing the best you can.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that too. And especially, you know, in the advent of AI, you know, I think like the silver lining of all this AI bullshit is that all of the people I don't care about in like the corporate universe, you know, utilizing it doesn't matter. But what it is doing is reigniting, like, instead of the high tech, it's reigniting the high touch. And people are really kind of getting back into, hey, you know, we're all like crooked humans, but that's kind of beautiful. What are we doing? You know, it's like, you know, let's make books again.
That's
like,
what makes it great. It's like physical. Getting back to
physical media.
It's been kind of heading in that direction, and I think AI just kind of kicked it up a notch. You know, and it's, you know, it's so funny because I see people using AI now for YouTube thumbnails and stuff.
I know.
And it's like they don't have any kind of pull to me. It's, remember when they first came out, it was like, this is pretty amazing. Some of these are pretty amazing. These are pretty impressive. And now it's just like it's just been a glut of the same old shit. It all looks the same, and it's like, oh, it doesn't make me want to click on it.
You know, that's so funny, because that's exactly, I was talking about this with somebody else, but it's like, it's not, I don't even have to be intellectual about it. I literally, anytime I see an AI image, I automatically know it's AI, and my interest wanes.
Holy.
It's like, I'm just like, okay,
it does the opposite now. It does the opposite of what it's supposed to do, which is kind of hilarious and perfect.
Yeah. And like, you know, I know, like, I've been pretty vocal about my disinterest in AI art and its use, and, you know, people using it. But there are great folks like Ali Words, you know, technomancy, kind of communing with AI, you know. So there are people doing cool stuff out there with it that is intentional and fun and revealing. But like, just the advent of the whole, after my aggression subsided about everyone being obsessed with it, you know, like it was met with this almost like this exciting retaliation, where I'm like, here we are now, people are remembering the beauty of human error, and I'm full of human error, so like we're gonna have a good time, you know.
It's it's the imperfection and the humanity that makes it good. There's a guy, speaking of people using it right, there's this guy Dougie Pledger is doing kind of amazing stuff on Instagram, but this guy on Twitter, Frank Manzano, it's like, this, to me, this is the way AI should be used, because it looks real, like real people. It's not like imitating artists, it's imitating reality. And it's so fucked up, like nightmare. You've seen the nightmarish imagery. Like
I feel like is it like it kind of has the veneer of like 1970s film, like
kind
or
of,
like
but
a
everything's
8mm camera or something.
kind of, but
Yeah.
like everything's morphing into each other, and the face, it's
maybe.
like people that like are. It's like a nightmare. It really is the closest thing I've ever seen to a nightmare or a bad dream. It has the
Okay.
feeling like it's doing kind of what your brain does on a really scatterbrained nightmare. But you should check his stuff out, because to me it's like that is, if you're gonna use art, AI to make art, that's kind of the pinnacle to me. Like, make the most disturbing fucked up shit work. Don't try and duplicate reality perfectly. That
Absolutely.
is lame. The thing when you're it's new, it feels like it's its own medium, and it's disturbing and totally so weird. It's so disturbing and off-putting that I just love it.
That's so interesting. But yeah, that's kind of the same thing with when like the sample culture was kind of hitting its apex, and digital audio workstations became affordable, and then like a MIDI controller could mimic a cello or a trumpet or a Rhodes piano, like, but you can tell, like intrinsically can tell. I'm sure they're getting better with it now, but that's always been my ethos. Like, if I'm using a Casio keyboard, I'm using it for the Casio shitty lo-fi Casio keyboard sounds.
Exactly.
I would never try to replicate something that I could do live or capture live.
Right.
Maybe it's different if you can get an AI like Tuvan throat singing or something.
Yeah.
Nightmare, by the way. But yeah, how was that? Have you seen kind of a good? I feel like I was worried. I know Eric Millar and I, who I brought up before, we the Hallowed. So it's got, the website has been around for years, and we've been putting out original art and content and albums and videos, and find out that, because we were using WordPress, that data was sold, to AI, generative AI engines. So we immediately were like, fuck, but it's kind of subsided since then, and I think a lot of it is because I see more of an appreciation, or I'm more invigorated by like non-artificial generative intelligence or whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think,
that's kind of what I was when when AI first started coming around and people were really freaking out, artists, illustrators. I was trying to like be a look on the bright side kind of person about it, and I kept saying, now is the perfect time to like start that fine art career that you always wanted to start, because they can't fuck with your fine art. They can't copy your one original oil painting. I don't even care if a robot is copying it. It's not the same thing. In fine art, it's like, specifically in fine art, paintings and things like that, it's like, it's about collecting original pieces for collectors and relying on a very small core group of collectors that want an original. And that's one thing that they cannot fake. I don't care. Can't be done, because they want a piece of art that has been painted by the artist, a certain artist.
Yeah. From the calluses on their fingers to the bones, how they set and grew in their hand, to the neurology. Like, I'm serious. Like, all of that stuff matters.
The dog hair in my paintings. It's like, it's part of the characteristic, and it can't be faked. So I was kind of I got a lot of pushback because people were like, I get it. Looking back now, I was like, I probably shouldn't have been like that. But I was trying to offer, like, everyone in professional illustration, or from where I was from, makeup effects, was always talking about they wanted to be fine artists, they want to do fine art, and they never did it because the money's better. It's hard to make a living. So I was just trying to make the point, like, if it is coming and it's gonna screw everything up, here's one way they can't fuck with you. If you're making your own original stuff, it's a harder road, but you won't have to worry about being put out of a job.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment, and I wish more people adhered to it. But at the same time, I feel like I'm at that place where after, years of working with different artists and different mediums, like there's no pulling teeth. Like if you know what I mean? Like it's hard to ingrain motivation for someone to follow, their passions these days. And like with the advent of social media and this kind of false equivalency of success that's happening, it's almost like harder. I just see like a general flakiness or lack of effort, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
would think like something as big as that, it's like, well, you can't be comfortable anymore,
Right.
because it might fuck with your livelihood. uh in that sense, I think that it's a pragmatic call to arms to be like, well, then
Yeah.
screw it, I'm gonna go the other way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's like, this is something you've always been talking about. Maybe it's a good time. Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a good time to at least start because, it's a harder road being an independent fine artist, but you really do create your own opportunities. You're not waiting around for someone to hire you. You're like, oh, I need money this month. I got to figure something out. I got to make
Yeah.
something and I have to get it out in front of people.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. It's a hard road, but it is, you're not worried. You're not, worried about not getting hired or your job getting taken away by AI,
Yeah, absolutely. But I love that as it's just a reality check. I mean,
Right.
I can, I dislike a lot of the use of AI. I'm just like generally disinterested and just not impressed.
Right. Yeah, same. Once the initial charm wears off, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now what?
But yeah, now that like that, it's like it's inevitable. Like no matter what anybody thinks, it's coming. So how that affects you is how it's going to affect you. But thankfully, I think for folks in fields like ours or passions or interests like ours, it's more of like getting a bigger separation between, or like kind of culling a bit,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
of avenues, because it's just
Right.
it's going to buoy in-person gallery shows and live performance and all of that stuff. So
yeah, it's like, but that's, and that's the thing that it will never be able to do. It's like, it will never be able to perform live. It will never be able to, the only way to really experience a band is seeing them live, having that experience. And the only way to really see a painting is to see it in person.
Absolutely.
And that's it. And there's you can't fake that in any way. It's like, it'll always be that way too.
I can't stress enough how important, like the somatic relationship between an artist and what you're experiencing from that artist is, it's just so, it's just so intrinsically powerful, that, your diet during that period, your thought process, things were happening in your life,
right?
Like the physiology about like everything about you was kind of captured.
Right.
Know?
Totally. All the things you're worried about, all the stresses, all the, the satisfaction of creating the piece, all the episodes of the Brady Bunch I watched while I had on in the background while I was painting. That's the funniest thing too. It's like the stuff I put on is like
the contrast,
crappy stuff that I grew up with in the 70s. So it's like I went through a deep dive of What's Happening. Do you remember that show, What's Happening, with Rerun and Roger? So it's like I'm painting these totally disturbing paintings with like either, What's Happening in the background or the Partridge Family or the Brady Bunch, all this like super cheesy stuff. It was kind of perfect, really.
It's like the food the beast was eating, more episodes, more Alice than Annie.
The demon eats cheesy 70s crap.
Or like the like post-nuclear family,
totally
stuff,
man.
Which is kind of true. I feel like that's the encampment that David Lynch beacons from, is that kind of like deterioration of the 50s nuclear family.
Totally.
The dark underbelly.
I love that. I never thought of that, but the idea that the creature that you're painting is being fed by the the music you're putting on, or
Yeah.
the thing you're watching in the background. I love that idea.
That's I'm just it's probably maddening or kind of superfluous for a lot of people, but I really kind of obsess about those like little documentarian aspects, because it really does paint like a picture, a really true, beautiful like picture of the atmosphere you're existing in when you create,
Right. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think to go back to set and setting, how important that is, especially if someone enjoys or like is pulled by something you created, like it literally takes them there. It's really fascinating. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing to connect with someone who you don't know that sees the artwork and they're like, oh my god, this person is like me somehow. Like the connection between two people through a piece of artwork, whether it's a song or or a painting or whatever. It's
or just words,
right,
just freaking words. It's crazy. Yeah.
It is crazy. I was gonna say something about the AI and scraping data. I noticed that when it first started happening, I was putting my artwork in the lookup thing to see if it was in the database, and it's like, all these old pieces were, but I still haven't been able to. I haven't seen anybody do a good fake AI version of one of my paintings. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm like not mainstream enough or something, but there's not a lot of other people doing it. I think with the stuff that it's using the most popular artwork, I think.
Sure.
So that may be so anyway,
it's just a search engine that is mashing up the results of your search query or whatever.
Yeah. So I may be enough of like a cult artist or something to where I'm not famous enough to be in like really have my stuff in there and represented well.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say,
that's surprising, actually. I was gonna say,
well, I haven't.
It's surprising that it couldn't replicate it.
It maybe it can, and no one's done it yet. But I haven't seen it. I've seen people try to do it, and just doesn't. They think it looks like my stuff, and I'm like, it doesn't look like my stuff. I know what my stuff looks like. I mean, I saw a model a Chet Zar AI model that was sold on the black market, and the samples were just like shit. They sucked. It's like I saw it and I was all pissed, and I saw the sample. I was like, okay, go ahead. It doesn't look anything like what I'm doing. It's so bad.
Wait, explain that. So someone engineered an AI model of your what? It just fed it all of your stuff or something?
I guess so. Everything that's online. There was it was on this website where there was a whole bunch of artists, and I was one of them.
Do you remember what the website was?
No, but I could find
I don't know. I don't want to promote them.
Yeah. I could find out. I know the guy who told me about it would remember probably.
That's scary as shit.
I know. But like I said, I was pissed at first, and then I saw the sample. I was like, this is terrible. I'm not worried about it. But my point I was initially going to make was I noticed that everything up until I got on Patreon was in the database.
Yeah.
But the
paywall,
the stuff behind the paywall on Patreon, none of it was in there.
That's awesome. That's
that's kind of a way to. I made a video on the Dark Art Society podcast YouTube about like it's a way of protecting your artwork. Put it behind a paywall. The problem with it is, if you don't have a following, it's hard to get people to pay for something that they're used to getting for free. It's like, I've got like 124,000 followers on Instagram, and I've only been able to manage to get 300 something people on Patreon. It's like, no, it's hard. Yeah. It's like, tiny percentage are willing to pay.
And they like, comes and goes and
yeah.
Yeah, that's how mine is. It'll like, oh, that's an exciting, and then it'll like down. And, but that's good to hear, because I've used Patreon almost exclusively for art barfing everything. Demos and writing drafts, and you know what I mean. Like I'm just throwing everything out there. So that's really good to know that.
yeah. That's and they say that they don't sell your data too. It says in the terms of.
Hell yeah.
So that's good.
Okay, Patreon, you get another point. But yeah, speaking of which, your Patreon is it's great. And I love seeing your updates, your works in progress. What's the deal with the statues, like the figures actually that you're making?
Oh, the divine feminine figure.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's I just started finally shipping them. They're about this is the
So
figure.
good.
Glows in the dark.
It's like an ulterior Santissima Muerte kind of.
Yeah, it's again, it's like it's based on a painting. It's based on a painting that I did for a Giger tribute show of all things. And again, it was like totally intuited. It's a female, which I don't always paint, and you know, it's got but it's like that was a conscious effort. It's like I want to do more feminine energy. I've been more like, I had kind of a moment in my spiritual life where I'm like, why am I thinking of God as a male figure? I've been doing this my whole life, even though I'm super like liberal, open-minded. It's embedded that I see whatever it is, the thing, as male, and
it's
I'm like
masculine.
And it's masculine. It's like I more relate to feminine energy, really, if anything. And, you know, I've got a strong wife, you know, all those things. I really, you know, I appreciate women.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so like spiritually, I'm like, okay, I'm going to really try and make an effort to kind of direct my honoring the spirit and thinking of it in more feminine terms. And that was around the time I painted this. So it was kind of like me sort of like kind of getting into this headspace of you know, God, worshiping the goddess over the God kind of. And so that's why I was like, so I just kind of intuited this painting, and it's got like it's got holes in the hand. Yeah, it's got the holes in the hands, like crucifixion holes, and it's got the ankh, and I don't know, it's very kind of dark Gothic Virgin Mary sort of.
But it seems like universal, and you have like, you know, a few different, you know, religions represented.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of my own personal mashup of, I don't know,
I love that. And it just like, it reminded me, because I work with Santa Muerte a lot.
Oh, cool.
Just because of like where I come from.
I love that. I love it. When I first discovered it, I was like, this is probably what I should be doing. It's so like in line with my artistic self, you know what I mean?
It's a beautiful, like, rogue kind of, you know, ramshackle folk magic. But you know, it's in the shadow, right?
And I'm also Mexican too. It's like I've got
beautiful. Yeah.
I'm like a quarter Mexican, so I feel the pull to that, you know.
Yeah, probably far more than I would, but I was a güerolito growing up in the Southwest, little white boy. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But awesome. Like it was it was around so much. I only mean that to say the way I work with her is quite similar. The way like I envision her, sure, she might be in the shadow of Catholicism, right, as a rogue saint or heretical saint, which just kind of makes her cooler, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's a bonus.
But like I feel like she to me is like that great visage of like the divine feminine, you know, the
absolutely.
Great mother. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so that was my version of it.
I love that.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
you know?
And they're beautiful little idols, or like little like figurines, like I would use, or anybody would use, you know, on altars.
Right.
And
I feel like it's, you know, it's kind of my offering to her too. When I decided to make that change in my spiritual life, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this out. I'm gonna, you know, incorporate it into my art and get it out to people, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like penance, you know. Sorry, I've been
exactly. I've been neglecting you. I'm gonna get you in people's hands. I'll tell you the thing I like the most is She comes in an upside down coffin.
Holy shit! Yeah, that is so
I thought
badass.
that was the coolest thing ever. I was like, again, this is the thing, the daemon or whatever.
Right.
So I'm coming up with this. I had the idea to do the figure because I like the painting. And again, I tell you the background of kind of getting into that divine feminine spirituality. And I'm thinking, okay, how can I present this? So I'm like, coffin would be cool. It just feels right. And so I found a place to get coffins on relatively cheap coffins on eBay or Amazon. And I got the coffin, spray painted it black. And I was like, it doesn't really fit the right way around. Oh shit. If I turn it upside down, it's perfect. And it's way cooler.
It's way like even that it's almost intrinsically kind of like anti how you understand what the coffin. You know
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the way her, because of the way her hands are, it's like it's more shaped like an upside. So it looks like, I'm some genius that came up with this idea to do that. And it's like, no, that's the way the genius works. It wasn't me. It was inspiration, like, just being open to working with what you got and being creative with it, and it was like, I never would have intellectually thought, an upside down coffin would be badass. I'm not, like I said, I'm not that smart, but I am capable of like recognizing something cool when I'm open enough to recognizing when something's, I don't know, when you see something, it's like, that could be cool. I recognize the possibilities, but I'm not good at like just coming up with that idea on my own.
You act. And I really dig that about you. And I think just a kind of a general idea of like certain artists and practitioners that I revere, like they're just guns blazing. Like I just, if there's something intrinsic in them, I just got to do this. And then afterwards they're like, I see the tethers and I can, I can combine or like I can define these things. But at first it's like, there's just something barking deeply and it's got to get out. I don't want to sit here and talk about what I'm going to do. I don't want to sit here.
I just want to do it.
Yeah. Just want to do it. Yeah. And that's, but also the multi-medium thing too, which I really dig, not only the background in SFX, but like making the figures, like that's always exciting to me too. It's not limited to a medium when the daemon, barks or whatever. It's like,
and the more you know how to do as an artist, the more multidisciplinary you are, the more options, that art spirit will come at you with, like,
Absolutely.
What I mean? It's like it'll give you things that maybe you don't know how to do, but it knows that you could know how to do it. Like you're saying, playing the cello, it's like it knows that you can figure it out.
Banjo maybe was one, or like a few notes on a trumpet.
Right.
Or just it's like those practical, that's the thing, that's your initiatory way in. It's like, I dispelled this elusive idea of this instrument because something motivated me to make it do this one thing I needed for something, and now that's opened the doors for continuing to do that. I love it, man. And so outside the October show, like what's going big in Chet's world?
That is, I can't see anything beyond that. That's it. That's all I'm working towards.
You're focused,
I have to keep, bringing money in somehow. So it's like, I'm doing little sales and stuff as I need money to pay the bills while I work on this stuff. And, I've got all kinds of big plans that may or may not happen once I get through this year. But, I feel like I put this book out, which is this magnum opus, and most of the people in the Kickstarter have gotten it. I've sold it on the website, but it's still like, my masterpiece. When you see this book, you're going to trip out, man. I'm telling you, it's like all out tome. Yeah. It's really like it was very expensive and a lot of effort was put into it. And I'm just an independent guy though. It's like I don't have it on Amazon. I don't, I had it in I don't know, you can buy it at Copro Gallery, but these are like it's, to me, the book is like, it should be, remember bookstores when you'd go and you could get you get the monster manual in bookstores. It was there and you could look at it, and it's like there are no bookstores anymore, so, or not a lot of them, but I just feel like
if there are, you don't have the time to hunt them down.
Yeah, exactly.
Each one,
and that's just kind of the story of the independent artist. You do your best with what you can, and that, that shouldn't stop you from making the coolest stuff you can, and you got to kind of trust the universe or whatever that it's going to get in the hands of the people that it should get in their hands. But that doesn't stop me from dreaming big and thinking about like a comic book, doing like a Kickstarter for a graphic novel. That would be amazing.
I mean, I'd be so in. Yeah, that would. Chet Zar, I'm surprised like there hasn't been a dip into that medium yet, as it was, even if it was like a cover,
Yeah, I've just never been.
You would knock it out of the park. Like
well, thank you, but I love comics. Especially horror comics. I grew up with horror comics mostly, rather than the superhero stuff.
Sure,
but it's like I never got hooked in with that scene. It's like a totally different scene,
Yeah.
So I never had the opportunity.
What's that? That's its own. I said it's true. It's its own kind of self kind of generating, industry,
and you got
and also jobber artists,
Yeah. So you got to put some. If I put some effort in, I could probably get in there and do some stuff. But I've sort of got my thing. Yeah. For better or for worse, I've got a thing, which is art shows and creating original pieces of art and selling it online, and hopefully hopefully I can turn the dystopia thing into something more like you mentioned games or whatever, card games, or then there's like a tarot deck I want to do. It's like I would die to do a tarot deck. It would be amazing. There's just like there's never a shortage of ideas. There's just a shortage of time and money. It's always.
But I love too that of course, and you'll probably tend to those ideas, obviously. But I love how that you have discipline enough too to know, like, hey, this October show is a pretty magnanimous ordeal. I don't want to distract myself outside of kind of that focus, which I struggle with, even with deadlines, is just wanting to do a bunch of other stuff on top of it. So
but it's like it's how. But the thing is, it's like
that's how
I'm relying on that to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
People I know, collectors. A few collectors are coming from out of town, flying in for it.
It's exciting.
The gallery relies on me.
So let's talk about it. Like,
so it's like
I'm show itself. I don't think we talked about where it is.
Oh, I can't. So basically, what I'm saying is I can't really let myself get distracted because I got pressure from other people are depending on me doing this show.
Sure.
Otherwise, it would be easier to be like, oh, I'm going to work on the comic tonight. But yeah, it's at Copro Gallery, which is in Santa Monica. It's really my only gallery. I used to show at Last Rites Gallery in New York, but they closed down during the pandemic, and it was Paul Booth's gallery. And Copro Gallery in Santa Monica. They're great. They're like the number one kind of dark art, weird surrealist, dark surrealist gallery in town.
No, I'm excited, and
opens October 12th.
October 12th. Yeah. I hope things align for that. I'll definitely put the the info for that in the show notes. So
cool.
Check it out. There are a bunch of LA folks who I'm sure would die to go see your art up close.
Yeah, it's you got to see it. That's everyone who goes to an art show that it says the same thing. You have to see it in person. There's something about like energetically or something.
Yes.
Some kind of energy coming off the painting. You could be scientifically minded and say like, well, that you're getting different your eyes are picking up different hues. You can see the texture of the paint, but I really feel like it's more of an energy thing. But maybe that's the same thing. Maybe those things are part of the energy.
I mean,
of it, you know.
Yeah, you're witnessing up close like an artifact.
Yeah.
You know, that was manipulated and touched and dealt with, and like, yeah, I can't stress enough how important that part of it is. And you know, the online stuff is great for, you know, getting people to that stuff.
Yeah. It's like it's like kind of like the old DIY punk ethos of you make the record or the CD or the cassette to promote the show for your tour, and you make the money from your they weren't making a ton of money, but they were making their money through touring, and the album was just promotion for the tour.
Yep.
You know,
it was the in between, when they're not there.
It's like the thing to get people to go see you live, which is your main thing, which, for, these punk bands and stuff.
Absolutely. And I think, to go back to that, where I think, I don't know if like culture as a whole, but I know the people that I care about, and I'm interested in artistically, such as yourself and others, like, are going that route, or like, it's going to up the DIY punks again, and it's going to be a lot of fun with in-person somatic, rhythms. Small publishing, and
if anything, man, this whole AI thing that's the thing. It's like, I feel like it's going to, if AI art becomes this big thing, and it's putting illustrators out of business, it's fucked up. I see it all the time now on, like, when I look up the news or whatever, they're using them in ads. And I saw one for like a hotel chain the other day, and it's like, it was so disturbing. Like, this lady with the kids, like, on a water slide, and like had an arm coming out of nowhere. Like, they're not even checking this stuff. They're just kidding. Anyway, what was my point? I had a good point. AI art. Okay. Right. So, I think what is going to happen inadvertently is what you're saying, whereas it's going to make unique physical art experiences, like seeing bands play. It's going to make all that stuff even more valuable and more important. Like, the more digital and and it's like, I like digital. I think digital's cool. I use it as a tool for
tools, right?
Yeah, but the more we're infiltrated with AI and fakeness, and all this phony shit, it's like the real stuff's going to become more important and valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's that delineation too about, like, we as artists, use digital tools because these were invented to be egalitarian. Like, that low income people could create works of art, right?
Yeah,
we're not using them to replace.
Exactly.
Like, but they are corporations and companies are doing that. They're taking it away from us again.
Right. That's more of a, I don't know. It's more of a capitalism problem,
right?
Yeah, and if they do that every time when they have the opportunity, they do it every fucking time. It's just like, that's how they are.
And I am bummed for the friends, like, in the industry that maybe lost out on creating that commercial. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't give a shit about that commercial, let alone if it was filmed in 4K.
Right.
It's a corporate commercial, so I guess let them eat cake.
True. Good point.
But yeah, man, I'm so excited we got to do this. This was this is awesome. It was such a good trip.
Yeah, nice conversation. Appreciate it.
And I'm really excited for the October. I'm going to try to corral the weather so that I can dip down there, because I was just in LA a couple months ago.
Oh, cool.
Plans to go back.
That'd be great.
I don't know if you've ever been to the Philosophical Research Society.
Yeah.
I
did a talk there. Yeah.
Was that with Mitch? Or?
Yeah,
he
interviewed me, and I did a slideshow presentation.
I love it.
Yeah,
that would have been
great.
amazing to see, because that's what I'm, even with like the advent of podcasting and this
Right.
broadcast thing, like live talks are great. You know?
Yeah, you can't beat it. You get to meet the person and go
Yeah.
talk to them after. Yeah, it's the best.
That's amazing. But yeah, so anyways, I'm excited to do that. And please let me know if there's other things that, you know, come up that you want me to help promote. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
I'll shout out the podcast too. The Dark Art Society podcast. It's now on YouTube as well. It's an audio podcast, but now it's video for the last 2 years. I guess it's already been like six years we've been doing it. Crazy. People still don't know that I have this podcast. People that are fans of my work, it's crazy.
Yeah,
so
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like it's crazy. But
I was like, is it a tagging issue? Like what? You know, I was just listening to Richard Metzger talk about how he had to go deep onto TikTok to reach out to modern or like younger magical practitioners. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, am I not loud enough? What is happening? You know,
I don't know. I think maybe what we're doing is so niche,
yeah,
that we're not going to get picked up by the algorithm in the way that people doing stupid shit like dumb Mr. Beast stuff. It's like, you know, it's kind of our lot in life. Not to say we shouldn't try and game the system best we can, but you know, the reality is, like, you know, we think these are great podcasts, but you know, it's like our tastes are a little different than kind of the average person.
Oh, for sure. I was telling Mary, my partner, the other night, I was like, you know, as somebody that really values their authenticity, individuality, and like wants to wear the outsiderdom on their sleeve, I can't get mad if people don't notice me. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
right. Yeah, it's part of our brand in a way. What do you expect? but I have to say though, it's like, you know, with the Dark Art Society podcast, the mission statement is to legitimize dark art. So I interview artists that kind of do weird, monstery dark art, and I try with the idea of, like, I guess the idea was sort of like letting the public know it's okay to like this art. It's as valid as people who paint flowers or bowls of fruit. It's a legitimate subject. It's just not taken seriously, and this is why it should be serious. And I interview all these artists, and you realize that, like, we're cool, nice people, kind of deep thinking people, and just worthy of consideration. And it also, you know, comes I hit topics that I'm interested, like magic and stuff, side stuff like that. But mostly it's focused on art. And so it is the goal kind of is to try and like give it a wider audience, dark art. Yeah. Because
it's a beautiful podcast.
Thanks.
I've met a lot of artists that I'm now into because of the podcast.
Great. That's great to hear.
Albert Fish was one.
Yeah. Cool guy. Yeah. That's great.
But you guys always dip into, what I love about it is there is an element, I think, with us having to exist in this world, you know, that I don't want to say blue collar, but there is like a, you know, utility kind of driven, like we're, you know, being honest about like the work ethic and all of that. And your podcast is brilliant about discussing all of that, you know.
Thanks. It comes up. It's a natural podcast, and that's like, this is the stuff that artists talk about, you know, when they're hanging out for lunch or whatever. So it kind of, you know, the realities of the work, and it is blue collar. That's the thing. It's like people, you know, because we're more independent and we don't go to, you know, banker jobs or whatever, it's still, you know, it's like being a plumber or mechanic or something in a way. It's like the difference, the only difference between that, because most of the work, you know how it is, writing music, recording music, it's like, it's a lot of hard work, like fixing a pipe, you know, or fixing
a lot
car.
Of utility.
Figuring out how to make this the way you want it. And the only difference is that you're rather than repairing something for someone else, you're you're you have an idea that you want to express and you're serving this idea. So it's like you're not serving a customer with a clogged toilet, you're serving this spirit that's telling you make this thing.
So unclog my toilet. Yeah.
Unclog my spiritual toilet.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like,
yeah,
but that's, you know, that's the most of it is blue collar, the grind, you know, working the Wayne White. Have you ever seen that documentary Beauty is Embarrassing? Wayne White?
No.
You got to see it. It's great. He's a great artist, Wayne White. But he's doing, like, he's painting and they're filming him at one point. He's like funny. He's funny. His artwork's funny. And he's like, this is the ditch digging part. You know, coming up with the idea is the fun part. And then the ditch digging part is like 90% of it, where you're just like the slog to get to the final piece, you know?
Yep.
And that's most of it. And that's a blue collar work, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's transference. Like, we're working on a new like music project that's very straightforward. They're like, their songs is with a drummer in Chicago, and like we just hit it off. It was so exciting. We have 6 songs worked on, and now I'm like, fuck, here comes the mastering. Like, I'm gonna rush the mastering job. You know what I mean? It's gonna be a lot of computer work, and that's not even counting the I gotta post it on social media.
Yeah, the promotion and figuring out the packaging and all that stuff and printing things out. It's like it's a grind, man. So it is. It's very. It is. It's more. It's got more in common with the blue collar world than the white collar world, for sure.
Well, yeah, I know it firsthand too, because I work in the event industry as like a AV specialist. So all of my all of my companions and coworkers, we're all like technically proficient in the technical aspect of the audiovisual world, right? But they're all budding musicians and filmographers and cinephiles, and they're all people that like, okay, we have a union, we go to work, we get these jobs, we work them, we build them, and then we go home and we work on our shit. And it's like, it's very much like the technical aspect for money on one side, and then it feeds into the other thing,
because it's like an art related job. So you get a lot of like artists who would rather just be artists, but they figured out a way to use their talent to earn a living, which is totally legit.
And that's like, that's how it goes. But I've always considered the freelance lifestyle, like that in and of itself is you're a non-agent of your own chaos, but you also taking it at will. So it's exciting, and you do great work, and I hope Dark Art Society gets more listenership, because there's a lot of like really valuable information for artists and people going, damn the man, kind of how do I do this?
I try and talk about stuff I wish that I would have, I wish there was a podcast like that when I was first starting out, basically.
That's exactly right. Well, thanks, man.
I'll have to have you on sometime for an interview.
I'd be honored. Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll do it.
But thank you for coming back and humoring me. Of course, the internet gods are good when I'm just recording. Right?
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. It ended up working out, because I think this is a great conversation. So
absolutely valuable, and actually motivational, because I have to do some like mixing and cleanup now. I'm like, gotta punch into work,
Same here. As soon as I get off, I'm gonna try and finish this painting. Just get it started.
Turn to the I love it, man. Well, thanks again, and let's keep talking, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help get the word out about the show in October.
Appreciate it.
Anything. Just let me know.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course, and thank everybody for catching this. And the audio version will be both of them, I think, together. Cool. But I'll be premiering this pretty soon, because I don't, unless there's something you feel like I should edit out, but I doubt it.
No, it's all good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. And yeah, thanks everybody for catching it. And
Thanks,
haunt
everybody.
on.
Thank you. Haunt on.
Some cosmic influence previously unknown is coming through from beyond the normal tree of life.